There is a place on this earth that men have been willing to die for. In every century, under every flag, in every language known to history. 14 hectares, ancient stone, a hill at the center of Jerusalem, where three of the world's largest religions converge, and where at this very moment, something silent is watching. Not an army, not a priest, an algorithm. Walk through the old city of Jerusalem today, and you will see them mounted on walls, embedded into archways, positioned above gates that have stood for centuries. Hundreds of cameras, steady, impassive, covering virtually every approach to the Temple Mount. The system has a name, Mabat 2000, and it was not designed merely to record. It was designed to recognize. This investigation is not about politics. It is not about taking sides in a conflict that has lasted 3,000 years. It is about something more unsettling. The convergence of a 2,000-year-old prophecy and the most advanced surveillance infrastructure ever placed over sacred ground. By the time this is finished, you will understand why serious theologians, intelligence analysts, and archaeologists are beginning to ask the same question. Is Jerusalem becoming the proving ground for a system of global control that Scripture described long before Silicon existed? The Promise section. This investigation is not about politics. It is not about taking sides in a conflict that has lasted 3,000 years. It is about something more unsettling. The convergence of a 2,000-year-old prophecy and the most advanced surveillance infrastructure ever placed over sacred ground. By the time this is finished, you will understand why serious theologians, intelligence analysts, and archaeologists are beginning to ask the same question. Is Jerusalem becoming the proving ground for a system of global control that Scripture described long before Silicon existed? But first, you need to understand exactly what is being built here, because the cameras are only the beginning. Mabat 2000 was first deployed in Jerusalem in the early 2000s, presented publicly as a counter-terrorism and public safety measure. At its inception, the system consisted of a network of cameras feeding live footage to centralized command centers. The Israeli Ministry of Public Security oversaw its installation. The framing was clear. This was security infrastructure, designed to protect one of the most threatened cities on Earth. But Mabat 2000 did not remain static. The system has been upgraded repeatedly through successive technology generations. By the late 2010s, the infrastructure began integrating AI-enhanced video analytics, Systems capable of not merely recording footage, but actively interpreting it, identifying faces in crowds, tracking movement patterns, flagging individuals of interest across fragmented camera networks. The cameras stopped being passive witnesses. They became active intelligence collectors. Estimates of the total camera count in the Greater Jerusalem Surveillance Network now range into the thousands. Multiple credible sources have reported figures exceeding 5,000 units across the metropolitan area. In the Old City specifically, a single square kilometer containing the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Temple Mount, the camera density is among the highest of any urban environment on Earth. There are streets in the Old City where at any given moment, a person is simultaneously visible to multiple overlapping surveillance systems. Alongside the camera grid, Jerusalem has been enrolled in what planners call smart city initiatives. Sensor networks embedded in streets, digital management of pedestrian flow, data collection at the gates of the ancient quarter. The language used for these programs is always the same: safety, optimization, efficiency. But look at where the sensors are concentrated. The highest density of digital infrastructure in Jerusalem clusters around the Old City, and specifically around the perimeter and access routes of the Temple Mount. Multiple human rights organizations and investigative journalists have documented the deployment of facial recognition technology at key checkpoints throughout the Old City. Non-governmental organizations operating in Jerusalem have raised formal concerns about the scale of biometric data collection affecting residents, worshippers, and tourists of all faiths who pass through the area. What this means in practice is this: a biometric profile, a digital map of a person's face, their movement patterns, their patterns of arrival and departure, is being assembled for everyone who approaches the most theologically significant location in human history. Think about what that sentence means. In the place where Solomon built his temple, where the book of Daniel described visions of the final ages, where Jesus warned his disciples of things that would come. In that exact location, the identity of every human body passing through is now being captured, classified, and stored. And that raises a question that has nothing to do with security policy. It has to do with what the ancient texts actually said about this place, about control over it, about what would happen here in the final chapter of history. To understand why any of this matters beyond geopolitics, you have to be willing to go backward, 2,000 years backward, and listen carefully to what the ancient texts actually describe, not with credulity, not with dismissal, with the same analytical attention you would give to any historical document that has shaped the behavior of billions of people. The question this investigation is asking is precise. Does the infrastructure being built over the Temple Mount in 2025 and 2026 structurally resemble what those ancient texts described would be built here? And if the answer is yes, what does that imply? The prophet Daniel, writing in the 6th century before the Common Era, described visions connected to the Temple Mount that have occupied biblical scholars for more than 2.5 millennia. In the 9th and 11th chapters of his book, Daniel references what he calls the abomination that causes desolation, something established in or over the holy site that represents a fundamental transgression of the sacred space, not merely a military occupation, something that claims authority over the ground itself. When Jesus references Daniel's prophecy in Matthew chapter 24, he does not treat it as already accomplished in history. He frames it as future. He tells his disciples, "When you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, understand that an unprecedented period of tribulation has begun. Flee. Do not hesitate." Scholars in the futurist tradition of biblical interpretation have long argued that this passage points beyond the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD to something still ahead, something yet to be installed in the holy place. Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians adds a dimension that has rarely been examined in light of modern infrastructure. He describes a figure who will seat himself in the temple of God, not in the sense of physical presence alone, but in the sense of claimed authority, a proclamation of control over the sacred site, a declaration: "I determine who enters here, under what conditions, by what authority." Early Christian readers understood this as a future sacrilege, not merely military conquest, but administrative dominion over the holiest place on earth. An act of authority disguised as an act of management. The Book of Revelation introduces a detail that has drawn renewed and serious attention in the age of digital infrastructure. In chapter 13, John describes a system in which no one can buy, sell, or move freely through commerce and society without bearing a mark of identification. The language in the Greek text does not describe a minor inconvenience. It describes a comprehensive system of access control. Without the mark, you cannot participate. Without your identity being verified by the system, the gates close. For most of Christian history, this passage was read symbolically or as a reference to Roman emperor worship. In the age of biometric databases and AI-managed checkpoints, serious readers are looking at the text again. Now hold the text of Revelation chapter 13 in one hand. In the other, hold what exists on the Temple Mount today: the biometric checkpoint system, the AI-managed surveillance grid, the network that captures, classifies, and tracks every face that approaches the most contested sacred site in the world. The ancient text describes a system of access control enforced through identification. The modern infrastructure is a system of access control enforced through biometric identification. This investigation is not claiming they are the same thing. It is noting that the resemblance demands serious attention. And serious attention is precisely what some scholars are paying. Not fringe voices, not speculation on message boards. Theologians affiliated with established institutions, seminaries, academic research centers, theological journals, have begun examining the intersection of contemporary surveillance infrastructure and eschatological biblical categories. They are asking the same question this investigation is asking, not whether cameras are the fulfillment of prophecy, but whether the architecture of digital control over sacred space structurally matches the conditions the ancient texts describe. And the answer they are finding, cautiously, carefully, with full scholarly qualifications, is that the resemblance is closer than comfortable. Throughout all of recorded history, control over the Temple Mount has been an act of supreme authority. Every power that conquered Jerusalem made the Temple Mount the location of its definitive symbolic claim. The Romans built a temple to Jupiter over it. Byzantine emperors placed a church on it. The Umayyad Caliphate raised the Dome of the Rock. The Crusaders repurposed those structures for Christian use. Every transfer of authority in this city's history has been enacted through this single location. What has changed in the 21st century is how that control is expressed. It is no longer expressed only in stone and architecture. It is expressed in data. There is a concept gaining currency in security and policy circles: digital sovereignty. The idea is this: in a world of comprehensive surveillance, whoever controls the data controls the reality. Applied to the Temple Mount, digital sovereignty has a specific meaning. Whoever manages the biometric databases, whoever controls the AI systems determining who is cleared for access and who is flagged for attention, holds a form of authority over the sacred site that has no precedent in human history. It is invisible authority, algorithmic authority, and it does not require a flag, an army, or a public announcement to exercise it. Here is the question that cuts to the center of this entire investigation. Why is Jerusalem, specifically, consistently, repeatedly, where these technologies are first deployed, first refined, and first proven at scale? What is it about this city, about this 14 hectares of contested stone? Why is it always here? The answer lies in a convergence of factors that security researchers and technology analysts have identified with unusual clarity. First, geography. The old city of Jerusalem is barely 1 square kilometer, compact enough that total surveillance coverage is operationally achievable in a way it would not be in a sprawling metropolitan area. Second, political justification. The genuine security complexity of the site creates a permanent rationale for technological escalation, one that would be harder to justify in less volatile environments. Third, and perhaps most significant, the global attention paid to Jerusalem means that any surveillance system that successfully operates here is immediately credible to other governments, other security buyers,
other states worldwide. Jerusalem is not simply being surveilled. Jerusalem is being used to prove that total surveillance works.
This is not speculation. It is documented. Multiple investigations by major international journalism outlets have established that facial recognition systems developed and refined within Israeli security infrastructure have been licensed, sold, and deployed in other countries. The surveillance architecture built over the streets of the old city of Jerusalem has traveled to Asia, to Africa, to Eastern Europe, to Latin America. The techniques refined on the ancient pathways of this city, identifying faces in dense crowds, tracking movement across fragmented camera networks, building biometric profiles at population scale, are now core components of the global security marketplace. A global infrastructure of identification and access control. This sentence delivered alone, deliberately, as if naming something that is only now being recognized for what it is. Pull the frame back even further, and the picture expands significantly. What is being assembled, city by city, country by country, is not a collection of isolated surveillance systems. It is a connected architecture. Facial recognition databases that share information across borders. Biometric standards being harmonized through international regulatory bodies. AI systems trained on the populations of one country, calibrated, then deployed on another. A global infrastructure of identification and access control. And at the center of the network that pioneered it, at the symbolic and geographic heart of where the technology was proven and from which it spread, stands the Temple Mount. In 2025 and into 2026, the tensions surrounding the Temple Mount have intensified across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Archaeological investigations in and around the site have continued to reveal new discoveries about the ancient layers of the city. Religious and nationalist movements have publicly articulated more assertive positions regarding access rights and the future of the location. International frameworks that have governed the site for decades are visibly under strain. And running through all of it, invisible to most observers, but present in every conversation among those who study the site closely, is the digital infrastructure. More cameras, more analytics, more biometric data captured and stored, more invisible architecture layered over the ancient stone. Stand on the Temple Mount today, if you are permitted, depending on your religion, your identity, your document status. And you are standing in a place being watched on two levels simultaneously. There is the ancient theological claim that this is the place where heaven and earth meet, where the divine presence was once housed, where prophets received visions that still shape the lives of billions. And there is the modern technological layer, the cameras, the sensors, the biometric systems, the AI analytics silently cataloging your presence, your face, your pattern of movement. Ancient ground, modern eyes. And the question that this combination generates, the question that no algorithm can answer,
is what this investigation has been building toward all along.
This investigation has not argued that prophecy is being fulfilled in the cameras on the Temple Mount. It has done something more careful and arguably more unsettling. It has placed two images side by side and asked you to look at them without flinching. On one side, the ancient texts, written across centuries, describing a future in which access to the sacred space would be controlled, in which identification would be required, in which the most significant site in human spiritual history would become the center of a contest between divine authority and human power. On the other, the infrastructure as it exists today, the cameras, the biometric checkpoints, the AI analytics, the global surveillance architecture exported from this location to the rest of the world. The resemblance between those two images is not metaphorical. It is not a case of forcing ancient poetry to fit modern headlines. It is structural. The ancient texts describe a system of access control enforced through identification at the most sacred site in human history. The current infrastructure is a system of access control enforced through biometric identification at the most sacred site in human history. Whether that resemblance is coincidence, pattern, or something the ancient writers glimpsed before the rest of us could see, this investigation deliberately leaves open. That discomfort is not a failure of the investigation. It is the point. And yet, every tradition connected to this place makes a claim that no camera can capture and no algorithm can process. The Psalms describe a God who neither slumbers nor sleeps, who watches over every entrance and every exit of the city, who holds the fate of nations in what the ancient poets called the palm of a hand. The book of Isaiah describes a sovereignty so total that the most powerful empires of history are in its frame less than a drop of water from a bucket. Every surveillance system ever constructed has at some point failed, been switched off, been compromised, been overcome by forces it did not account for. The watching described in those ancient texts is of a different order entirely. The machines are watching the Temple Mount. That is a fact of this moment in history, one that deserves to be understood clearly, without panic and without denial. But the machines cannot interpret what they are watching. They can identify faces. They cannot read what those faces are searching for. They can track movement through an ancient gate. They cannot measure what a soul carries through it. They can catalog the body. They have no instrument for the interior life. That gap between what the algorithm knows and what the human being actually is the space into which 2,000 years of theology has placed its most essential claim. You are more
than your biometric profile. You are more than your access status. You are more than what the cameras can see.
Jerusalem has been contested territory for 3,000 years. It has been conquered, rebuilt, destroyed, and reclaimed more times than any other city on Earth. Every empire that believed it had finally solved the question of who controls this place discovered, eventually, that it had not. The Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Umayyads, the Crusaders, the Ottomans, the British. Each arrived with certainty. Each was, in time, moved along. The algorithms are the newest arrival. They too are watching. They too believe they are measuring something. And they too may eventually discover that the ground beneath them is older than any system built to manage it, and more patient. The eyes are watching. The question that remains, the one this investigation leaves open, as every serious investigation must, is a simple one. Who is watching the Watchers?